All right, ladies. So let us just repeat. So
Uh,
someone has a question. Okay. All right. So learning objectives. Two objectives. We are continuing to look at the historical process, and we're looking at the effects of European and African migration on the Caribbean. Now, this is our timeline that we are working with, right? Based on our timeline, which period we would have looked at last, based on our timeline.
uh,
11,000 years ago, crossing the Bering Strait.
Yes, and which other, which,
the migration of the indigenous people in the
yes,
Caribbean.
yes, the migration of the indigenous people in the Caribbean. So both year, 11,000 years ago, 1,200 to 1,300 AD, that's the period that we would have looked at, the crossing of the Bering Strait. What are the different views out there about the Bering Strait?
So there's two theories. You have the ice bridge theory and the land bridge theory. So they're saying that before the islands were the land were connected either by ice or by a piece of land that the indigenous people were able to walk across.
Yes, yes, you are correct. So that's the theory. 11,000 years, well, 1,200 AD. What was the configuration of the Caribbean land? Well, it shouldn't be, it wouldn't be 1,200. But by 1492, when Columbus arrived in the Caribbean, what was the configuration of the Caribbean in terms of indigenous? What was it like?
Sir,
Yes, go ahead.
there were Tainos who lived in the Greater Antilles,
Hmm.
Trinidad, and the Kalinagos who mainly lived in the Lesser Antilles, as well as the Mayans and the Garifuna, who tended to be more on the mainland territories.
But the Garifunas, you're correct, but the Garifunas would have also have when Columbus came, the Garifunas would not have been on the mainland territories, correct?
Yes, sir. It wasn't until after.
Yes. So when the Garifunas would have lived on which island? Well, on which island that grouping of people would have developed.
They would have also started in the Lesser Antilles.
Yes, but on which specific island though? Anyone want to help? St. Vincent. All right. So St. Vincent was the area that the Garifunas would have developed. Africans left, ran away from the plantation, went inter in mix, had sexual relations with the we call it with the Kalinagos, and that racial mixture led to a new, well, not a new group, but the offspring were called Garifunas, right? The After a period of time, the Kalinagos or the Garifunas, they had a big war with the Europeans. The Europeans expelled them to the mainland Central America, and so they would have lived in Belize, Honduras, along that area. And so today, we have Garifuna living in Belize, and also some would have also returned back to St. Vincent. All right. So that's where we are. So now we're looking at 1492, the the arrival of Christopher Columbus. Columbus did not discover the Caribbean. He came, he saw, and he conquered. The So by 1492 to 1494, we have Columbus arriving in the region. Then by the 1500, they would have settled, the Spanish would have settled in the region. And having settlement, they found quite a lot of resources here in the Caribbean. And so some other, their neighbors, when you're doing extremely well, what are some of the effects of doing extremely well?
Sir, the other European nations became jealous.
They became very, very jealous. Yes. And so the other European nations, they became jealous and they are coming the, into the Caribbean or the Americas, and they are trying to take a piece of the 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 prop the they're trying to take a piece of the, I wouldn't use the word gold, but to try and get some of the wealth. All right. So other European nations coming in, they are going to rival the Spanish claim of the Americas. And so one of the, I think we would have looked at, I'm not sure because it's classes, would have looked at one of the first place that the British would have settled was St. Kitts, and that would have been 1623. Uh, and then Barbados was settled by the British. That was the second territory that was settled by the British. That was settled around either 1627 or somewhere along that line. Can't remember. And then Jamaica was taken over from the Jamaica was taken over from the Spanish in 1655. All right, so we have all of these settlements. Then the French, the Dutch came, and that's why we have all these different European groups in the Caribbean today. All right. So what we're going to do is that we're going to look at the Europeans in general, all the impact of the different European groups coming in to the Caribbean space. So we know for sure once they came into the Caribbean, the first thing that the Europeans saw would have been indigenous people living in the space, right? Because they are indigenous to the space. So the impact of Europeans, the first impact is demographic impact. 1 second, please, David. Yes. So one of the first impact is demographic effect uh, of the European, and as we mentioned, demography has to, to deal with people. And so we're going to have racial mixtures between the Europeans and the indigenous people that is going to produce a group that is called the mestizos. Please note the name here, mestizos, because you usually get this on a multiple choice. So the racial mixture between the Europeans and indigenous people, the mestizos, mixture of different racial groups. The next is that Africans are going to mix with the Europeans, that is going to produce mulattoes, because when the Europeans came, sorry, when other European countries came, theories out there have it, or not theories, some mention that they would have had Africans with them, not in large groups, but they had African. For example, Columbus, there's, I believe in his diary, it was alluded to that Africans were on his ship when he came. He had a few Africans on his ship when he, that would have been the, what that group name again? The Moors, right? On his ship. The today in the Caribbean, with our populations are not largely people of European descent, but we do have people of European descent living in the Caribbean today. Yes, and maybe not on our individual islands, but for example, in in places like Barbados, you have you pe- English people from way descendants of English people from way back then still living in Barbados today. They are considered, well, red. I think they are called rednecks, and they lived. They 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 were like the descendants of poor whites in the colony. So we have, it's not a lot of European descendants from way back then that live in the region, but we do have it. And good place to see the descendants of European maybe is Cuba, places like Puerto Rico, Jamaica to some extent, because we do have some white Jamaicans here. And I'm not talking, when we talk about white Jamaicans, I'm not talking people like Edward Seaga, right? They are not, Edward Seaga is not white, he's Syrian. So
There,
most people, yes, go ahead.
there's a community in Westmoreland and they're all German down there.
Thank you very much. The C4, that C4 town in in Westmoreland. But most of the, you have been to that area before?
Sir, I've never been there, but my dad told me that when he was growing up, he used to see them.
Yes. I'm not sure if they're still, of course, they're still there, because I had a friend I had a friend in university, and she was from that area. And also one of my very good friends in high school, he was very proud of his German heritage. So he always tell me that, oh, I am German and all of these different stuff. So we do have, so for example, people like the Eldemeyers, I believe, are German descent. So the Caribbean still has whites living here, Europeans living here. Also, but the Germans who actually came to the Caribbean came after slavery ended. All right, so that's a point we need to know. The Another thing, ladies, that impact when it comes to demography is the genocide of the indigenous groups that would have affected the population of the indigenous group significantly. Uh, Not all groups, because we know for sure that there was not like a genocide overall, because we still have descendants of indigenous people living today. So that is the first effect. Another effect is our language. Most of our territories, ladies, are the official language uh, is is very much European, uh, especially the people or we speak. People try for us. Well, not people try. We are basically taught to speak the standard English. Although some British people, well, most British people cannot speak standard English. Same thing with the Americans. And so everywhere in the world you go, there is a Creole language. Everywhere. Let us just put it out there. So we need to stop look down on our Jamaican Creole, our Barbadian Creole, our Trinidad Creole, our French Creole in Saint Lucia and Haiti. Every single country in the world, there's a Creole. Every single country. However, what is pushed in the school as language of instruction and doing business is the European languages. Languages such as the French, English, and Spanish, and that is still prevalent today in the Caribbean. Names of countries today in the Caribbean still has uh, we still have European, we call it names of countries, for example, Hispaniola, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Trinidad. These are all European names, right? If we look at our own names in the class, we will realize that we also have European names like Bailey, Blair, Chambers, O'Connor, right? Campbell, Francis, Fletcher, Watson, Jackson, Gordon, all of these, even my name, Hall. How a black man supposed to name Hall? That don't make no sense, right? Makes no sense. Because if you go to Africa, there's no Hall in Africa. It's not indigenous there. It's a European name. However, we would have received the surnames of the planters, and also somewhere down our family line, a family member would have chosen a particular surname after slavery ended. They would have. So that is, there are two views out there how we come about our surname. Because if we should do a family history when it comes to Hall, like I have been doing one, and the most I have found is I've just found my father's grandfather, who actually came from Hanover. That side in Hanover, my father's grandfather came from. The After that, I don't know anything else. Because no, I would have to trace his father, and his father would have been an enslaved person. And if his father was an enslaved person, there's really no record there to say which part of Africa he came from, or if he was even born here. There's no such record. So I am most of us are really left with an ancestral deficit, if you understand what I'm saying. if so our names of towns and streets, St. Catherine, St. Andrew, in almost every Caribbean country, you have some St. Andrew as a parish. Westminster Street. Any other European names in our territories?
Trafalgar.
Trafalgar, yes, very British. Any other?
Wellington Street.
Wellington, yes, correct. Next,
Lady Musgrave.
Lady Musgrave. Musgrave was from the governor, a British governor's wife. Any other name? What about rivers?
Rio Grande.
Yes. Any other?
Rio Cobre.
Cobre. These are Spanish. And so we are correct, ladies. We have all these European names in our Caribbean. So in addition to the indigenous names, for example, in some territories have quite a lot of indigenous names there. We also have in the Caribbean some countries or territories that are named from. The Europeans would have given their own names. And places, streets, rivers, everywhere you turn, European, right? So it influenced our language. Next one, Christianity, religion. Our religious views are largely influenced by European Christianity, denomination, Roman Catholics, Anglican, Baptist, Methodists are all European denominations of Christianity. And notice I say European denominations of Christianity because Christianity existed outside of Europe or developed outside of Europe. Christianity actually started in that area in Israel based on the scriptures. And so what we have now as Christianity is really a European version that is passed down, right, from us. So our religious system is very, very, very European. In most Caribbean countries, the European religion is considered to be the state church. For example, in Jamaica, the state church here, I don't know if we really have a state church anymore, but back then it would have been the Anglican. Barbados, for sure, the state church is the Anglican church. In Grenada, the state church is, and Dominica, the state church is the Roman Catholic. I'm not sure for Trinidad because Trinidad wouldn't have one because Trinidad is so multiracial, well, multicultural. Our education system, as you would have mentioned, also the Europeans have impact our education system, uniforms, our syllabuses, our syllabi, our exams. We have admiration of European scholarships and universities. The last class, I believe I asked students if they were interested in the Rhodes Scholar, applies for the Rhodes Scholarship. Anybody here ever think about it? The Rhodes Scholarship? All right. So no one interested in the Rhodes Scholarship. When I was growing up,
What is that about? What is the Rhodes Scholarship about?
the Rhodes Scholarship is a prestigious scholarship that you apply for after your first degree. After you do your first degree, apply for the Rhodes Scholarship to do a master's in the UK. So you go to one of those top schools in the UK, like Oxford or Cambridge, to do your master's. And for the Rhodes Scholar, a lot of people apply for it. It's quite a lot. But maybe you're not in that not I wouldn't say the era, but you're focusing on in getting into university. But when I was growing up, everybody usually talk about, oh, you need to be a Rhodes Scholar, right? So if a Rhodes Scholar would be like the bright, well, that was the impression that was given, that you had to be very brilliant. When I was growing up, they always tell me that, oh, you need to go to Oxford or Cambridge to study, right? That is the desire that your parents had for you to study at one of these schools. Right now, we are influenced by America, so people want to go to Yale, Harvard, or any other school in the so far. If you are very paid, well, if you have a regional outlook, most of us, like myself, will go to the University of the West Indies. So religion or education system, our political system is largely influenced by European. Our political parties are structures, our governmental structure, our constitution, our head of state. Even today in Jamaica, they still say a, a prayer for Queen Elizabeth when they are starting the parliament. Yes, she's still our head of state. Same thing for places like Barbados, Grenada, St. Vincent, these territories, they're head of state. So you have two things. You have a head of state and a head of government. The head of government is the prime minister, the head of state is the queen. And so in most of our territories today, we still have the head of state as the queen. Our justice system is very much European. Our laws are very Eurocentric. Our court system very Eurocentric. We have the Privy Council, which in Jamaica, if and some other Caribbean countries like St. Vincent, the Cayman Islands, Grenada, after if you have an issue at one of the court, you can appeal. So, for example, you don't like the judgment that took place, or the judgment that the judges gave, you can appeal. And so the final appeal that you can make is the Privy Council. And so if I need to appeal, so for instance, I'm in some form of problem, or I didn't like the decision of the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeal, I can go to the Privy Council in the UK and they can make a decision on my case. Most of us still have to rely on that, which is very that persons outside of your country making decisions on the rule of law. Most senior lawyers in the Caribbean, they are awarded with the title as Queen's Counsel. Yes. And the structure of our courts very much similar to European. Uh, Another impact of Europeans in our Caribbean is our buildings. If we look in, this is a picture of Grenada right here. The buildings along the shore, this is an older picture. The building along the Carnage, very European look. It's Georgian architecture. Same for Barbados. Well, these are modern buildings in Barbados here, but the Parliament building here is quite a European looking building. I believe at the end of this street, I believe there is a bank at the end of the street. Uh, I think it was a bank. It's somewhere. It's a Western Union where the UA buses used to park. The those buildings down that side, they are very much European in their outlook. And the waterfront along here also have some new buildings, but most of the buildings are European. Downtown is a perfect example of seeing the European architecture in our buildings downtown Kingston. If you, well, if, well, most of you might not even know that it's European design building, but downtown, if you, well, for any one of you familiar with the space, it's a very beautiful space, right? Not saying that I'm admiring European buildings, but if you should go to downtown on a Sunday, you will see the beauty of downtown King. Not when so much people gather all over this the city, but if you go on a Sunday, you really see the beauty of it. You see the buildings, you can see the design of the buildings, all of these different stuff. You can study the buildings. Some of our schools, for example, this is Jamaica College. If you look at the building right here, it's very European. This is their main building. St. Andrew, the main building, although it's some form of modification, it still has its Georgian roots. Same thing with Devon House. Yes, here, Devon House, very European. Anybody has ever been to St. George's College?
Yes, sir.
Yes, so
Yes.
yes, so St. George's College is a perfect example of European architecture that still is alive and well in the Caribbean. The, what do you call it? Curacao. Anybody has ever been to Curacao before? Nobody has ever been to Curacao?
No, sir.
All right. So after COVID, tell the parents that you need to make a trip down to Curacao because the buildings there, I'm gonna show you a view of it. It's one of the most beautiful Caribbean cities that I've gone to.
Sir, will you sponsor us?
Sponsor, if I was making the money, I would. But you know that teachers don't get any money, you know that, right? So, but look at this, Elliot. This is Cruises. A pretty. This is how the Dutch had their building. Very colorful, very nice town in Crusoe. The buildings are very much European still today. Very Dutch looking buildings. All right. So that is one. Where is you're actually seeing the screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Good.
Yes, sir.
Where is ladies? All of this information is good enough, but it's when to write the information is going to be the issue for us. But we'll work on it later on. Where am I now? So we look at the European architecture, clothing. Still today, we still admire European clothing. The jacket and tie still popular for males. When I used to go to this church, the Seventh Day Adventist church, they used to push that they had to wear a tie and jacket to church. That's what I was growing up. That for you to go to church, you have to dress to please the Lord, wear your best. and people still do it today. Dress. This dress looks lovely. Anybody would wear this dress today?
Sir,
No, sir. No, sir.
the place is hot and
Sir, it
yeah.
depends on the event.
Depends on the event very well. So if you're going to maybe a ball, you'll wear it.
No, sir.
But it's a nice dress.
Oh, sir.
All these little stuff coming down and
Sir, a nice dress back in the day.
back in the day, all right.
Yeah.
I'm sure if a big designer come out with this, everybody going to wear it. Just saying. All right, ladies, food, teas, pastries. You know, for example, the black cake or the fruit cake that we have during Christmas, that is from Europe, or patties that we have today is a European, is a English type of patties. Uh, but we put our seasonings and stuff to it, and Caribbean season, and fix it up nice. That's why patties are popular. But patties are European pastries. Escovite fish is very European. That way of doing the fish is very European. So we still have that European element to some of our food. The music, such as the piano, the guitar, singing of hymns, very European influence in our region. Almost every event that you go to, there's a piano or a guitar there. And for churches, you have to sing a hymn. Even if you're singing the American worship songs, when it comes at the beginning of the service or the end of the service, you need to sing a hymn. Unless you're going to have problem with the older people in the church. You need some hymns that they know. And festivals, we still have Christmas, Easter, which emanates from what you call it now, from Christianity that we still practice today. So these are some of the influence of the Europeans in the Caribbean. Good. The Europeans in the Caribbean. Next, the impact of the Africans. So after the Europeans came, well, the Spanish came, then the view is that the Spanish brought some Africans, and then after that, other Europeans came, and then there's a mass importation of Africans into the Caribbean for who they would have enslaved. And so for the impact of the Africans on the region in terms of our demography, we have the racial mixture between the Africans and the Kalinagos, which we know that there are Garifuna, the Europeans, and the Africans, the mulatto. So there's racial mixtures with the Africans. And if we look at the Caribbean today, the general makeup of the Caribbean today, over 80% of the Caribbean are people of African descent. Jamaica, I believe it's over 90% of us African descent. Barbados 90, Grenada 90, St. Vincent over 90% of the people on these islands are people of African descent. Trinidad is like 50% of African descent. All right. So our demography is still very visible. We can't deny African roots. Most of you want to, if I ask you what's your race, you're gonna tell me you're Jamaican. Your race is not Jamaican. For those of you in the class who are of African descent, you are actually African, that's your race. Your nationality is Jamaican. Africa also has over 50 countries in Africa. So if you ask people in Africa what's their race, they're going to tell you that they're African. And if you ask them their nationality, they're going to tell you that they're Nigerian, or they're from Botswana, or they're from South Africa, or they're from Ethiopia, the same thing, or race. just like how the Chinese never lose their race. Chinese is Chinese, the Indian remains Indian, the African should remain African. But they want to like the term. For example, I always tell the story about my mother. She said that she's not African and she's Jamaican. I said, yes, you are. You're African. We are African. You can't deny it. But usually people believe that people who are Africans are the only people who are Africans are people who directly migrate from Africa to other parts of the world, or people who are now living in Africa that space today, but the descendants of those of of Africans are also Africans. Just like in the US, we have the Africans and African Americans, right? So our demography very much the same. Medicine, there's anybody had this for tea this morning? Mint?
No, sir.
Nobody fever grass?
Sir, I had fever grass last night.
Last night, very well. Peppermint?
Sir, I have a peppermint tree.
You have a peppermint tree, very well. So teas, all these teas, ladies, are very African teas. I believe they mint. This mint here, some people use it to cook, while others would drink it. You have tea like Search My Heart, Thirsty tea. Anybody else ever had that before? The Thirsty tea?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, you should try and have it. It's a little bitter, but it should. Now, when you get a cut on your hand or your foot, there's salve that your parents usually put on it. It's like an ointment that they mix together, have it in a little bottle, and they put together. Most of our grandparents have right beside their bed this bottle with weed in it or marijuana in it with some rum. Correct?
Yes, sir. My
Yes.
grandmother had that.
Yes, and they put and with the rum and the weed, and also they had not really, I wouldn't want marijuana. The next thing that they would have put in it is some drops of what they call pimento. And every time they feel up some pain, they said, pass me the bottle, and they slap their hand or whatever, right?
Sir, it
So
smells so bad.
yes, it does. It smell bad, but it's part of the African heritage that would have been passed down. Food. The Africans also influence our food. In the Caribbean, breadfruit, ackee, cuckoo, yam, dasheen. Here, what is this, ladies? Here.
Sir,
Blue jaws. jaws.
blue
jaws.
So we call this blue jaws in for Jamaica or dukuno. Uh, I don't remember the name that they call it in other Caribbean countries, but they have different names for it. But guess what? This is a practice that came from West Africa, very much popular today in West Africa. I believe in Barbados, when it's their independence around November, almost every house that you go to in Barbados have this, the blue jaws or the dukuno in it. I don't remember the name that they call it back. This also almost every Caribbean country has this as their food. Anybody recognize this here?
Sir, is that
Sir, it
turned
looks like
cornmeal?
turned cornmeal.
What we call turn cornmeal, yes. And so in Barbados, they call it cuckoo. Other Caribbean countries, some similar name to it. I believe that's part of their national dish. In Jamaica and St. Vincent, use quite a lot of breadfruit. Breadfruit is The first island in the Caribbean to have breadfruit is St. Vincent. The Africans brought the breadfruit to St. Vincent. And from St. Vincent, the tree was transplanted all over the Caribbean. If you love breadfruit, thank the enslaved people that brought it there and transplanted it all over the region, right? So the breadfruit, a lot of this, I would surely eat this for breakfast. After this class, I should go down to Apple Tree to see if anybody have breadfruit and canned saltfish. Island grill, maybe could have it. I'm not so sure. They usually have ackee in that juicy patties have ackee right about. So after class, ladies, if you want ackee and saltfish, you can go down to juicy patties. And ackee actually came from Africa, not the saltfish. Ackee came, the breadfruit. So most of our meals that we have today have some form of African links to it, especially the yam and the impact in the Caribbean today. Our music, our music today in the Caribbean very much influenced by Africans, the abeng, the flute, the tambourine. If you're a Pentecostal, you can't go to church without your tambourine. You must have a tambourine if you're going to church. All right, you need it from our Pentecostal friends. Drums in church, you need a drum, not only in church, but at national events still use drum. Everywhere in the world, people have drum today, which is an African instrument. Even if it is a modern drum, it's still African, very African. Dinky Mini, Brookings, Kumina, these are dances that we have in the Caribbean. The gyration of the hips and shaking of the rear, also Caribbean, where people wind up themselves. That is African way of dancing. Both males and females wind up themselves. The wine in quotation, they don't put wine. You say that the gyration of the hips, right? So that's what you write. The next thing, ladies, impact of the Africans on our recreation, Anansi stories, Duppy stories, ring games, Junkuno. These are some recreational activities or festivals that are very much African. In Grenada, they have something that is called Jab Jab that came from Africa. Uh, the language in the Caribbean very much influenced by Africans. We have words as picnic, sus, nyam, gal, me, uno, wana for some Caribbean countries, sense, tukuya. These are some African terms that are still very much evident in our lingo in the Caribbean. Today, even the mere fact that most of us have a Creole language in the Caribbean today shows the influence of the Africans in the Caribbean. Our religions in the Caribbean are also influenced by the Africans. We have Obia, Voodoo, Santeria, which is popular in Cuba, Revivalism, which is a mixture of Christianity and some African forms. Same thing, what we call revivalism in Jamaica is what they call spiritual Baptist in the Eastern Caribbean. And Shango, Trinidad also has Shango. These are some African-based religion that Africans influence us. Now, these are two recent books that have been published. This one is by Brent. Brent is my very good friend, and he did his research on Obia and Trinidad. His PhD, and he actually published his book this year. And this is another book that came out this year about Obia race and racism. In the Caribbean, we have all of these different things. Most people today, they might not, most not most people, but some people will not be upfront with you and say that they go to the Obia man or the Obia woman, but people actually still go there today. All right. For Haiti, voodoo is a national religion there. It's their state religion. And so voodoo, for me, from what I've seen when I went to Haiti, voodoo is like revivalism. That's that's my personal view. It's nothing, usually we think about all the African-based religion as being demonic. It's because of European that would have instilled these things, African-based religions are very much, you have clean versions and you have what we call the other version of it. Just like in terms of European have their own version of witchcraft. Halloween, one of the biggest celebration of witchcraft in the world today is the celebration of Halloween, and people celebrating, and it's so nice and it's everything. But if we should have maybe Obia festival, people have problem with it. I'm just throwing it out there that we do have all of these different stuff. Elliot, I know time has expired. Elliot, do you remember in the class in fifth form when the young lady said that her parents went to the Obia woman?
Not really.
Oh, I know everybody don't remember. Who else was in this class? Melissa is in this group.
Melissa.
Yes, sir.
You remember?
Yes, sir.
Yes, in the class, the student said that I said in the class that, some of us, I was teaching about the Africans and its heritage, and I said, we still have the, we call it, the Obia man today. And the student stopped me and she said, no, sir, not only the Obia man, we also have the Obia woman, because my mother and sister took me to the Obia woman. And the entire class, it was very, very funny anyway. But it shows that people still practice African religion today. Anybody have a neighbor that water they not really every morning they see them get up and then sprinkle water outside the door. First thing before they even step outside of their house, they have a basin of water, they just bring the water, throw the water outside. Anybody?
Yes, sir.
Sir, what's the meaning of that?
My
That's
neighbor
Obia.
does that.
Huh?
Yes, I have a neighbor that do that. That's Obia.
It's not obvious, but it is an African practice.
Oh.
It's an African religious practice. The reason why people do it is that in the night, anything can happen in the night. People can come and try to obey you in the night. So if you get up in the morning, the first thing you do, you throw the water, you wash away anything that anybody sprinkle at your door. That's the understanding. Anybody where people have squeezed the lime or the blue soap and have it in their homes. That's also, and most of you wouldn't admit it, but it happens. Anyway, ladies, those are the practices of the influence of the Africans and the Europeans on the Caribbean. When we meet again on Monday, we are going to look at the influence of the indentured persons who came as contract laborers in the Caribbean. All right, ladies. So your next class. If you have any question, I can remain.
Bye, sir.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, sir.
Bye, sir.